high above the shattered remnants of Atreia, where the floating islands drifted like broken teeth in a purple sky. Two girls sat on the edge of a crumbling precipice. Below them stretched the vast, toxic mists of a world slowly forgetting what peace looked like. This was the land of Ion, 200 years after the cataclysmic collapse of the Great Tower of Eternity. The world was fractured, torn apart by eternal conflict and the oppressive shadow of the draconic Belauer. The girl with hair like spun silver and eyes the color of a winter morning was Lyra. She wore pristine, feathered garments that shimmered with the faint, holy light of a dawn that never quite broke. Next to her sat Vesper, whose dark hair fell in midnight waves around a face sharp with determination and quiet strength. Vesper's cloak, woven from deep indigo fabrics and trimmed with steel, hugged her silhouette like a second shadow. Despite coming from opposing backgrounds, Lyra raised among the luminous heights of the sanctuary remnants, and Vesper surviving in the jagged, dark ravines of the outer frontiers. They were inseparable. Their friendship was forged in the fires of survival, a rare spark of warmth in an otherwise cold and unforgiving universe. On this particular evening, however, the heavy silence between them carried a strange weight. A faint, rhythmic pulsing echoed from deep within the crater beneath their feet. It was a low, melodic hum that vibrated through the stones, calling out to something buried deep within their blood. Lyra clutched her chest, feeling a sudden flare of warmth beneath her skin, while Vesper narrowed her eyes, instantly placing a hand on the hilt of her twin daggers. "Do you feel that?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling slightly as she looked across at her companion. Vesper nodded slowly, standing up with fluid, lethal grace. The wind whipped her dark cloak around her shoulders as she scanned the foggy horizon. "I feel it, and worse, we aren't the only ones listening." Look down at the lower ridge. Following Vesper's gaze, Lyra gasped. Below them, creeping like oil across water, a legion of dark, mechanized shadows was marching toward the crater. The Belauer forces were moving with terrifying purpose, hunting for something lost in the ruins. The air grew suddenly frigid as the creeping shadow grew larger. Without a single word spoken between them, years of deep-rooted trust and combat synergy took over. Vesper leapt off the precipice first, plummeting downward into the thick fog with her daggers drawn, leaving a trail of dark starlight in her wake. Lyra followed a heartbeat later, her body erupting into a brilliant cascade of white wings and blinding luminescence as she cast a protective ward over her descending friend. They landed in a ruined courtyard choked with ancient ivy and broken pillars. Instantly, the shadows materialized into monstrous foot soldiers wielding jagged weapons infused with glowing purple crystals, Fafnite gems, the dreaded technology used by the Belauer to strip souls and command mindless husks. Thereafter the relic beneath the sanctuary, Vesper called out, her voice cutting sharply through the rising din of battle. She spun into a deadly dance, her daggers flashing like lightning in the dark, carving through the front line of mechanized beasts with ruthless precision. Lyra did not hesitate. Hovering just above the battlefield, she raised her hands, chanting an ancient melody of light. Blinding rays burst from her palms, searing the eyes of the advancing monsters and creating explosive shockwaves that kept the reinforcements at bay. Every time Vesper lunged forward into danger, Lyra's light shielded her blind spots. Every time a creature flanked Lyra, Vesper's blades flashed to intercept the threat before it could strike. It was a mesmerizing display of balance, light and shadow moving as a single, devastating entity. They laughed through the adrenaline, their fears melting away in the heat of combat. They were more than comrades, they were two halves of an unyielding soul. Yet, as the last of the foot soldiers shattered into dust, the ground beneath them split open. A massive shockwave threw them both backward, sliding across the stone floor. From the smoking chasm rose a towering commander, its chest embedded with a pulsing, blood-red Fafnite stone that radiated an aura of pure, suffocating dread. The towering commander loomed over them, its massive side crackling with dark energy. Before either girl could recover from the impact, the entity unleashed a wave of psychic pressure that slammed into their minds like a physical blow. Suddenly, the ruined courtyard vanished. Lyra blinked, finding herself standing alone in a blindingly white expanse. Across from her stood an illusion of Vesper, holding a blood-stained blade and whispering cold words of betrayal. Asterisk. You were always holding me back. Asterisk, the phantom Vesper echoed, raising her weapon. At the same time, Vesper found herself trapped in an abyss of total darkness. In front of her, an illusion of Lyra stood bathed in a cruel, sterile light, looking down with absolute disdain. Asterisk. You are nothing more than a shadow destined to be erased. Asterisk, the phantom Lyra declared, pointing a glowing spear straight at her heart. The psychological curse of the Fafnir gem was designed to exploit doubt, tearing friends apart from the inside out by feeding on their deepest insecurities. For a terrifying moment, both girls hesitated, their hearts gripped by cold uncertainty. Could it be true? Had their friendship been an illusion all along? Then, through the fog of the false visions, both heard the same distant, ringing sound. A simple melody they used to hum when resting under the starlit canopy of their home province. It was a sound only the two of them knew. Vesper shook her head violently, dismissing the lie. Asterisk. Lyra would never say that. She trusts me completely. With a fierce cry, she lunged through her illusion, striking the phantom with all her might. At the same exact second, Lyra opened her eyes wide, rejecting the cruel whisper in her mind. Asterisk. Vesper fights for me just as I fight for her. With a blaze of pure white fire, she shattered her false vision into 1,000 glittering shards. Shattering the mental illusions broke the concentration of the Belaur commander. In the real courtyard, the two girls gasped for air, snapping back to reality just as the towering monster swung its massive scythe downward to crush them. Rolling in opposite directions, Lyra and Vesper sprang back onto their feet with renewed fury. The brief trial had not weakened their bond, it had supercharged it. Their souls resonated with a brilliant, harmonious frequency that caused the very air around them to shimmer. On my count, Vesper shouted, sprinting directly toward the towering beast, drawing its entire attention. She leapt onto its massive arm, driving her daggers deep into its joints to slow its movements, ignoring the crackling dark electricity that scorched her armor. Now, Lyra cried out, channeling every ounce of her celestial energy. Lyra soared upward, her silver wings expanding until they filled the night sky like a second moon. She gathered the ambient light of the floating islands into a single, blinding sphere of pure judgment. With a sweeping motion of her hands, she hurled the brilliant mass of energy straight down into the heart of the Belaur commander. The explosion was magnificent. The red Fafnir core cracked, unable to handle the sudden infusion of absolute light combined with the structural damage caused by Vesper's precise strikes. The monster roared in agony as it dissolved into a storm of fading purple sparks, leaving the courtyard silent once more save for the heavy panting of the two exhausted girls. Vesper dropped lightly to the ground, sliding to a stop near Lyra. She sheathed her daggers and offered a tired, genuine smirk. Took you long enough, she teased, catching her breath. Lyra lowered herself gracefully, letting her glowing wings fade into gentle sparkles. She rolled her eyes playfully and nudged Vesper's shoulder. I had to make sure you didn't trip over your own cloak first. They burst into laughter, leaning against each other for support amidst the rubble. But their moment of relief was short-lived. As the smoke cleared, the core of the defeated monster rolled across the floor, revealing a hidden chamber beneath it, and inside, a glowing fragment that pulsed with the ancient power of Ion itself. Kneeling beside the newly revealed chamber, Vesper brushed away centuries of dust to uncover a smooth, obsidian pedestal. Resting upon it was a crystalline artifact shaped like a teardrop, glowing with an internal fire that shifted between azure blue and deep violet. It was an Imperial Lord core, a rare fragment of the gods left behind during the ancient sacrifices. This is what they were looking for, Vesper murmured, her fingers hovering inches above the cool surface of the artifact. The Belaur aren't just conquering territories. They're hunting these cores to unlock the sealed gates of the lower realms. Lyra stepped closer, her expression turning grave as she placed a gentle hand over Vesper's shoulder. When their skin touched, a soft wave of golden light rippled outward, reading the residual memories locked inside the stone. Flashes of ancient history flooded their minds. Visions of the great wars, the sacrifice of the Empyrean lords, and a mysterious prophecy pointing to the rise of an arch-diva destined to either save or doom Atreya. "It's talking to us," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with wonder and sudden realization. "Or rather, it's recognizing us. We aren't just ordinary travelers caught in this war, Vesper. Our survival, our bond, it's tied to the very heartbeat of this world." Vesper looked from the glowing relic up to her friend. The shadows of her troubled past, the burning desire for vengeance that had driven her out of the safety of the bulwark, suddenly felt distant. In the warmth of Lyra's presence, the cold emptiness in her heart began to heal. "Then we take it," Vesper said firmly, her voice steady and resolute. "If the world is going to break, we'll hold the pieces together ourselves. But we do it together." Before Lyra could answer, the ground began to shudder violently. The cavern walls groaned under an immense pressure, and the sound of heavy, armored footsteps echoed from the tunnels below. More enemies were coming, drawn by the awakening energy of the core. "We have to move, now." Vesper grabbed the Imperial core from the pedestal, stowing it securely within her pack as a wave of dark energy surged up from the depths of the tunnels. Without wasting a second, the two girls bolted toward the exit just as the stone ceiling behind them collapsed into a shower of dust and rubble. They raced through a labyrinth of crumbling corridors, the cavern walls snapping and twisting around them as the entire structure began to cave in. Balour scouts dropped from the ceiling ahead, blocking their path with massive shields and crackling spears. Vesper didn't even slow down. Drawing a smoke bomb from her belt, she hurled it directly at their feet, blinding the guards in a thick cloud of violet haze. Sliding beneath a swinging halberd, she swept the legs of the lead guard while Lyra vaulted over her back, unleashing a burst of radiant energy that knocked the remaining pursuers into the collapsing walls. "This way! The bridge is out!" Lyra shouted, pointing toward a massive chasm where the ancient suspension bridge hung by mere threads over a bottomless abyss. "Hold on to me!" Vesper yelled over the roaring wind. As a massive stone slab crashed down behind them, Vesper caught Lyra by the hand, and together they leapt off the edge of the collapsing cliff right into the open air. For a breathtaking second, they were weightless. Then, Lyra's wings erupted in a glorious burst of silver light, catching the updraft and carrying them safely across the yawning chasm just as the entire bridge plunged into the dark void below. They landed hard on the opposite ledge, rolling across the stone and coming to a stop against a sturdy pillar. Panting heavily, they looked back across the chasm to see their pursuers stranded on the other side, roaring in frustration as the path dissolved into nothingness. Hours later, far away from the collapsing ruins, the two girls found sanctuary inside a hidden grotto nestled high within the tranquil peaks of the upper mountains. Crystal formations hung from the ceiling like chandeliers, casting a soft, soothing blue glow over the mossy ground. Vesper sat by a small, crackling campfire, carefully cleaning her daggers with a smooth whetstone. The rhythmic swing of steel filled the quiet space, bringing a sense of calm after the chaos of the chase. Across from her, Lyra sat cross-legged, gently holding the Imperial core between her hands, watching the gentle play of light dance across her fingers. "You know," Vesper broke the silence, her tone softer than usual, "before I met you out in the wastes, I thought I had to fight every battle alone. I thought trusting someone was just another way to get stabbed in the back." Lyra looked up, her gentle eyes reflecting the warm glow of the fire. She scooted closer, resting her head lightly against Vesper's shoulder. "You were never alone, Vesper. Even when you were closing yourself off, I was right there, waiting for you to realize that shadows need the light just as much as light needs the shadows to give it shape." Vesper smiled faintly, wrapping a protective arm around Lyra's shoulders. The tension that had defined her entire life seemed to melt away, replaced by a profound sense of peace and belonging. They had faced illusions, armies, and collapsing worlds, yet their friendship had only grown stronger through every trial. "Tomorrow, we find the rest of the cores," Vesper said quietly, looking toward the cavern entrance where the starlit sky twinkled peacefully above them. "We finish what we started. Together," Lyra added softly, closing her eyes as she drifted into a well-earned sleep, secure in the knowledge that no matter what dangers lay ahead, her dearest friend would always be standing right beside her. The first rays of morning sun broke through the crystalline roof of the grotto, painting the cavern in brilliant hues of gold and violet. Outside, the world of Atreya stretched endlessly into the horizon, a vast and untamed land filled with mystery, danger, and endless possibility. Lyra and Vesper stood side by side at the edge of the mountain peak, their spirits renewed and their hearts completely aligned. The wind caught their cloaks and wings, lifting them gently as they prepared to take flight into the unknown. They carried not only the power of the ancient gods within their pack, but something far more potent, an unbreakable bond of trust, courage, and fierce loyalty. With a simultaneous leap, they launched themselves off the precipice. Their wings caught the morning thermal, soaring upward into the endless sky like twin shooting stars cutting through the clouds. Whatever dark forces awaited them in the depths of Ion's fractured world, they were ready. Side by side, light and shadow, friend and protector, they flew forward to write their own destiny.